psychological level. Because every part of wellness. Namaskar. I'm extremely happy to be a part of this international conference on wellness through various therapies like yoga therapy, music therapy, sound therapy. And I'm extremely grateful to Dr. Anand Bala Yogi Bhavanani ji for inviting me to be a part of this. And the members of the entire organizing committee of this conference. The problem with health, wellness, well-being, where from it starts, it's a big question. Most of the times people find that, oh, everything was going on well and suddenly something has happened to me. It doesn't happen all of a sudden. Most of the things that we absorb in our consciousness, what comes from outside and what we create within ourselves at every level, at the physical level, at the pranic level, at the mental level, psychological level. Because every part of our being has its own core consciousness. And if we are not aware of that nucleus, and then we organize our lives in a very mechanical and robotic way, and we do not add rhythm to our movements, beauty to our movements, whether it is a physical movement or a verbal movement or a mental psychological movement or emotional movement or action. So therefore, yoga is all about creating that awareness and then organizing every activity of ours with awareness. And in the human being, the mind being the most important part of the being, if the mind, which also is connected with the vital and the physical being, because all the different parts of the beings are so well connected with each other that it's difficult to think of any part of the being in isolation. It's a very complicated process. But everything begins with mind, because mind being the prominent part of the being which keeps regulating our emotional, sensational and physical beings. So mind has to be kept in a good condition. There's a beautiful verse in Yoga Vasishta which very clearly explains what is the source of all our diseases. Why do we fail to maintain our well-being? What causes it? So it says, when the mind is afflicted, mind should never be allowed to be in a state of affliction. So Yoga Vasishta says, when the mind is afflicted, chitte vidhurite, the body completely follows the disturbance. Chitte vidhurite deha sankshobham anuyati alam. And due to the disturbance created by the affliction that has occurred in the mind, the vital airs, the prana vayu, or the energies, pranic energies, they start flowing unevenly. Sankhobhat samyam utsrujya, they become disharmonious. Vahanti pranavayava, they become uneven. And then what happens? Then the channels of such energy are reduced to an adverse state. Asamam vahati prani nadyo yanti visansthitim. So they give up their own sthiti. They become forced to give up their own sthiti. So they are reduced to an adverse state. Kaschin nadya prapurnatvam yanti kaschitya riktatam. So it means like some such channels go to the state of excessive fullness, purnatam, and some others to the state of depletion, riktatam. And because of this, there arises bad digestion, indigestion, excessive digestion, kujirnatvam, ajirnatvam, atijirnatvam evava. And due to the unmethodical movement of the vital energy, the food only sets out for causing harm. Doshaya eva prayati annam prana sanchar dushkramat. And thus the vital current carries the nutriments to its seat within. Tatha annani nayati antah pranavata swam ashrayam. It takes it to one's own seat. And whatever nutriments are left inside within the body, yani annani nirodhena tishtanti sharirake tani eva vyadhitam yanti parinama swabhavata. Due to the obstruction of their proper absorption, they alone go to the physical ailment on account of their nature of transformation. Then the physical disease arises, and the physical diseases arise out of mental affliction, and they vanish on account of its absence. Evam adher bhaved vyadhi tasya abhavatcha nashyati. So when the adhi is not there, then vyadhi also becomes absent. So it is the adhi which creates the vyadhi. So where lies the solution? Tasya abhavat. The abhava of what? The abhava of the mental affliction. Chitta vidhurata. That's why yoga is defined as yoga manah prashamanopaya. So it is through the yoga that the mind can be brought into a state of tranquility, which in its natural state is in a diffused state, in the ordinary consciousness. So to gather that diffused mind and make it focused, make it tranquil, make it peaceful and calm, undisturbed, unperturbed, is well achieved by the processes of various kinds of yoga. When we say yoga, so there are various upayas and various processes, different kinds of yoga by which the manah prashamanam takes place. So therefore, yoga itself is tremendously beneficial in maintaining our well-being. This can be hatha yoga, this can be mantra yoga, this can be all kinds of yoga. In my case, at a personal level, I take up the practice of the mantra sadhana, the mantra yoga, the nada yoga, japa yoga. It is through the sound, through the primordial sounds, one creates that pure vibrations, and those pure vibrations of the pure primordial sounds, they purify the various parts of our being and then bring tranquility to the mind. Therefore, mantras are, but what is again, whether it's a specific mantra or which sounds are mantra, the tradition says amantram aksharam nasti. There is not a single akshara, single sound which is devoid of mantra shakti. So when we speak, even japo jalpa, Shankaracharya says that every sound that we utter, we must feel the mantra shakti behind it. And we should be very careful in our verbal communication. In the matter of vak. So if our speech is pure, is with awareness, it has a tremendous impact on every part of our being, on the entire consciousness. And practicing the primordial sounds, the sound, the fundamental basic sounds that one has in the Sanskrit Varnamala, and the various combinations of those fundamental sounds are extremely beneficial and then help us in maintaining our well-being. So in silence, one can just repeat the entire Varnamala or pick up the specific sounds with which one resonates more. One feels comfortable, feels happy, joyful, and then keep them repeating. Or one can choose a particular mantra. It can be the mantra of one's own Ishta Devata, and then keep repeating it. But the whole purpose has to be manah prashamana, to bring tranquility, focus, concentration, calmness and steadiness in the mind. If the mind is in a state of concentration, mind is in a state of calmness and steadiness, then we will be in a position of maintaining our well-being, and much of the problems that any human being faces, physically or mentally, psychologically, emotionally, can be handled well by the steady mind. Therefore, the word mantra itself is defined as mananat trayate, that it protects, it gives the protection to the one who keeps repeating or keeps practicing this mantra yoga. Or one can say mantra. Tra is also another suffix in Sanskrit which is used in the sense of instrumentation, tool. So mantras are tools for bringing the mind into a state of silence. Simple practices of the mantras of one's own Ishtadeva, or simple fundamental sounds, the sounds resonating well with one's own Swabhava and Swadharma, one can pick up, but the practice must be on a regular basis. One can simply take up the sound A or E or U, or a combination like of the vowels with the consonants, kam or kam or kim. One can add anuswar or visarga to it, make it kah or kam, or ah. And then with purity, with sincerity, with dedication, with intensity in one's own aspiration, if a primordial sound is repeated and the force behind it is evoked and invoked, then the mantras, the sounds, like music, like any other form of the yoga, they start purifying and then calming the mind, which can save us, which can protect us from falling sick, or which can save us from many dangers that we keep facing. So with these words, I again thank you, the organizers, for giving me this opportunity within a short period of time, whatever is my understanding about the practice of yoga, and especially mantra yoga, nada yoga, japa yoga, and calming the mind and silencing the mind through the primordial sounds. So I shared with you all. Once again, Dhanyavad.
Namaskaram, my name is Yogacharini Sangeeta Laura Biagi, and I'm delighted to be joining this conference from Italy. I would like to first thank my yoga acharya and mentor, Yogacharya Dr. Nanda Balayogi Bhavanani, who is the director of the Institute of Salutogenesis and Complementary Medicine, and also congratulate the full team at the Institute for the vision and the skills of bringing together yoga therapy and music therapy and to foster the philosophy, the theories, and the practices of salutogenesis. Salutogenesis is a term coined by Antonovsky that has been included and has been integrated in the work at the Institute of Salutogenesis to provide an integration of ancient systems of health and well-being, such as Ayurveda or yoga, Chikitsa, and ancient systems of the study of the numerical relationships of harmonics in music, for example, in music therapy, and to benefit the research benefit from the research of these fields together with Western medicine, together with Western scientific research. And I think this is such a visionary manifestation. I feel truly delighted to be part of this conversation. So thank you all so much for having me here. So what I bring and my true passion and expertise is Nad Yoga. Nad Yoga in the parampara of Yoga Maharishi Dr. Swami Gitananda Giri Guru Maharaj Ki, of which I am an eternal student and also the director of research and studies in the teachings of Nad Yoga by Swami Gitananda. So my research has been focusing on the effects that inner and outer sounds have in us, on us, and also how the inner world of thoughts creates health or vice versa, disease. The teachings of Nad Yoga are part, of course, of yoga, of the Yoga Darshan, one of the 6 philosophies of Sanatana Dharma, and therefore Nad Yoga is part of the larger wisdom of yoga. And Nad Yoga is the study of the vibrational flow of existence. Some people translate Nad Yoga as the yoga of sound, but sound in the way we understand it as the expressed sound at the Vaikari level of Nad is only one of the 4 levels of Nad. So for the context of this conference, I will focus on the 2 levels of Nad, the Madhyama Nad and the Vaikari Nad. These 2 are sounds that we hear in our mind, for example, our inner voices, or the voice, the inner voice of our intellect, of the buddhi, of the higher conscience. So we're going to talk about the impact that the subconscious sounds of our inner thoughts have on our health, and then how through the model of 4-fold relaxation proposed by Swami Gitananda, codified by Swami Gitananda, we can entrain those inner thoughts and actually create a quiet of mind that is so useful and it's so necessary when talking about salutogenesis, when talking about health therapies, wellness, well-being. This is only one of the many aspects of research in Nad Yoga, but I think and hope that this will be useful in the context of this conference. So in the Yoga Sutra, Maharishi Patanjali, the 2nd sutra of Samadhi Pada, the 1st Pada, teaches us that yoga has chitta vritti nirodha. So yoga is the cessation of the whirlpools of the subconscious mind. So this is a translation, this is an interpretation, a translation by Swami Gitananda and Dr. Ananda. The cessation of the whirlpools of the subconscious mind. The whirlpools, the vrittis, are mental vibrations. Now we know that everything that vibrates creates a sound. Whether we can hear it or not hear it is not dependent on the reality that that vibration and that sound are there. It has more to do with the refinement of our sensorial apparatus, which is limited, as we know. But we know that the vrittis that come as cognition, false cognition, memory, sleep, for example, all of these do create a field of vibration that is often not perceptible from an outsider point of view, but that we perceive really well. For example, let's make a very practical example. Our inner thoughts, our inner voices, so particularly the subconscious voices. As Dr. Ananda reminds us in his teachings, some of the levels of disease that we experience that are, non-detectable, such as anxiety or depression, the ones that we cannot really see from the outside unless people know us really well, those ones that accompany other diseases, for example, these are often the result of, say, depression, regrets, or thoughts about the past. Perhaps there's a sense of failure, there's a sense of challenge regarding our current situation. Sometimes these negative thoughts come from too much pressure that we place on ourselves, peer pressure, or the pressures of the personality, which I will be mentioning in a few minutes. Otherwise, we have other, for example, emotions such as anxiety that may come from projections on the future. Now, all of these create inner noise. So even though we may not hear anything, we may be inside constantly battling with inner voices. These inner voices create a field of interference, a field of noise that does not allow us to hear inner sounds that come from a higher conscience. The inner voice of Buddhi, that higher voice that actually tells us, you're going to be fine, this is going to work out. By practicing specific concentration techniques, by practicing asana, pranayamas, by practicing deep reflection, swadhyaya, on the yamas and niyamas, you are going to succeed. You are going to be fine. You are going to be fine, this place of ease, of sukhasthanam. But when that inner voice is covered by the noise of the chittavritti, of the subconscious mind, most of us feel isolated, alone, incapable of managing, incapable of handling our responsibilities. So the connection between inner noise, agitated breathing, high blood pressure, and a bleak look on reality, an attitude that is pessimistic, is very strong. So there's a level of sound, even though it's not going to be your typical understanding of music therapy, but there's a level of listening to sound that is therapeutical, and that we should include always in our assessment of our own health and the health of the people we love or the people we treat if we are therapists and doctors. So how do we go about this? Of course, the sutra, to continue on with this amazing teaching of the Yoga Sutra, teach us that the two qualities we can develop to quiet the chittavrittis are abhyasa and vairagya. So effort, continued effort in sadhana, in practice. So the effort to say, I can, I will, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be fine, this is going to work out, you know, what in the West is called positive affirmations, positive thinking. So a bhavana that is committed to stay on the good. And this is a choice we must make. So the abhyasa, it's a choice. It's a moment-to-moment choice. When people are on a path of spirituality and want to integrate that spiritual path onto a medical profession, we must make a conscious choice to stay on the positive attitude. Okay, so that's the abhyasa. It's so difficult that it actually got a special sutra in the Yoga Sutra. You know, when something is difficult, if it's been quoted or used in the sutras and Bhagavad Gita and the Testament, and you know it's difficult. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there. So that's abhyasa, and then there's vairagya, like two wings, yes, of our viveka. Abhyasa, vairagya. The vairagya is a non-attachment, so a dispassionate awareness that we should not be attached to the fruits of that action. What does that mean? That we are bound to fail, we're bound to fall, we're bound to forget, we are bound to practice, and then something happens and we get immediately triggered. So these two together, as we practice more and we bring them together, they are going to overcome the vrittis. They are not going to erase the vrittis. Vrittis cannot be erased. They cannot be outgrown. They cannot be silenced. Okay, they are going to be there. They're part of how our mind works, our levels of the mind work. Okay, but at the same time, we can quiet them. How do we quiet them? So I want to share with you this teaching from physics and biology, because I think it's going to be very useful for us. So in physics and biology, we have a term called entrainment. Entrainment, I'm going to read the quote directly, signifies a phenomenon of sympathetic resonance through which something is made to have the same pattern or rhythm as something else. It is used in music and sound studies to describe how a prayer, or in our case a mantra, say, is able to regulate the waves of thought by absorbing them into its resonance. Okay, so it's a long description. What does it mean? So when we want to bridge yoga therapy and music therapy together to have a sense of personal ease, a sense of relaxation, what we want to do is to first be quiet enough and learn how to listen enough so that we can let these vrittis emerge. We don't want to identify with them or justify them. We don't want to follow them, but we do need to become aware of them. And most people are not equipped to listen to themselves. Most people were not taught to listen to themselves, and they will have an exacerbated, an overflow of talking and stimulation and listening to things and all this noise that they have inside. They want to cover with more noise, because listening to the inner noise is quite scary. It's scary because it asks us to be very aware and very honest with our inner state of being. And that's scary. So most people fill their mind with more noise, their lives with more noise, so much noise, so much noise. Even social media, it's like scrolling, always. The news is like that. If you notice, there's so much noise everywhere. So we want to quiet and learn to listen. In order to learn how to listen, we need to learn how to breathe. Breathing evenly, breathing slowly will open up the sense of listening. Listening is a conscious hearing. Hearing we can hear, we don't hear, it's fine. But listening, you need to have a conscious choice to listen. So as we breathe in and we breathe out slowly, our sense of listening begins to flourish and to refine itself. So breathing in and breathing out in simple pranayama practices that are without kumbhaka, without retention even, just inhaling, exhaling, and listening to the sound of the breath. This is such a wonderful teaching. Such a wonderful teaching, the ajapa japa, the soham hamsa mantra, in listening to the breath as you inhale and exhale. So simple, so ancient. So as you do that, you will begin to notice the mind chatter. Against this field of quietude that the breath regulation brings up, the vrittis are going to rise up. You're going to listen, but in some meditations from Buddhism, they talk about listening, observing the mind. It's more about visuals, but in Nad Yoga, we bring everything to the oral. In some of these practices in Buddhism, for example, or even in Christianity, you find some of these where you observe something and then you observe the mind like clouds, right? Or the reflection of the clouds on the surface of a pond. In that same way, you can also bring this metaphor to an acoustic level, and you just begin to hear the nad, the movement of the vrittis. You'll begin to hear it against the regulation of the breath. We don't want to catch them. We don't want to grab them. We don't want to identify with them. We're just going to let them flow. At some point, we can, for example, whoosh them out. Yes, to release some of the pent-up stress or the pent-up thoughts. You can inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth. We can release them like that, for example. And then we can choose a very simple sound, a bija mantra, such as the sound of Om. Or in other traditions, it could be Amen, Amen. A simple sound to start. And begin to repeat that sound first at the Vaikari level, at the audible level, with just an exhale. So inhaling and then exhaling, Amen, or Om. And you inhale and you just do a japa like so. Eventually this repetition will become more subtle and you won't need to repeat it out loud. You can just repeat it inside of your mind. The effect of such practices help you entrain the vrittis with the sound of a selected mantra, a selected prayer. A concentration, a seed of concentration, a dharana or nad, that is, to begin, a very useful practice, because it will take your mind away from suffering. And I would like to conclude with this, the difference between pain and suffering. While pain is something we feel at many levels, physical level, emotional level, mental level, suffering is an attitude that we develop. It's a story that we weave around the perception of pain. And this story is a vritti. And this makes sometimes, well actually most of the times really, our recovery or our healing process much more difficult, sometimes impossible. If the suffering, the story of suffering, is stronger than our will, our abhyasa, to commit to overcome, commit to be well, commit to reach out, to go beyond the sense of isolation, of the me, mine, mine, then we can truly hope for healing. And so the mantra, for example, or the chanting of a prayer, the repetition of a rosary, of a mala japa, for example, help us reduce the effects of the identification with disease, the identification with trauma, identification with a particular moment of suffering, which has to be there at first, of course. Of course, we're not gaslighting the people who are traumatized or suffering at all. But at some point, it must be overcome. And this cannot happen if a person is isolated or alone or too involved in my suffering. So this is where yoga and the Sanatana Dharma, the teachings of Sanatana Dharma, as well as many other traditions around the world, spiritual traditions, help us with. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your kind attention and for your research, for your presence here. It means a lot. And may we all join hands and join hearts and minds to support each other. May we always learn together. May we always support each other and not be envious or jealous of each other. And may we grow in yoga together. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you so much. And happy continuation of this most auspicious conference event. Namaste.
Namaste, Vanakkam, and welcome to this wonderful event which has been hosted by the Institute of Salutogenesis and Complementary Medicine, Sri Balaji Vidyapith, deemed to be University, Puducherry. And I would also like to congratulate all those who have been very much instrumental to organize and get together all these people together, the wonderful speakers, and also to have so many presentations with regards to the researchers as well as the students and people who are interested in both these sciences, that is the salutogenesis as well as complementary medicine. Particularly, I would like to thank my very dear and near friend, Dr. Ananda Balayogi Bhavanani ji, who happens to be the director of this institute, a very versatile personality and a dynamic human being who is continuously, incessantly working towards spreading of these indigenous sciences and art forms, including yoga, medical science, music, dance, etc. Along with him, I also would like to congratulate and also thank the team of this Institute for Salutogenesis and Complementary Medicine, Dr. Meena, Dr. Balaji, and all others who have been working day and night to make this event a grand success. Well, usually I happen to catch the buses late, so here too I am catching late on the bus owing to some of my engagements. The topic today, which has been given to me for discussion, is Swasthyam through yoga and music. I would like to chant 2 verses before I start what I have to say, and then I'll be talking with regards to only those 2 verses, and we'll see how we can come on to the topic of Swasthyam. So may I request everyone to please be concentrative, focusing between the eyebrows, controlling the mind, focusing on the breath. Omkaram bindu samyuktam nityam dhyayanti yoginaha kamadam mokshadam jaiva omkaraya namo namaha chaitanyam sarvabhutana vivrutam Jagatmana Nad Brahma Tadanandam Advitiyam Upasmahe Advitiyam Upasmahe Advitiyam Upasmahe. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So, the first verse which I chanted, we all know, and it is regarding the praise of Om or Pranav, which Acharya Patanjali ji has stated to be the form of Ishvara himself. Tasya vachaka pranavaha, that is what he has stated. And while that verse, it stated that the yogis continuously meditate and contemplate upon that Omkar that provides all the desires, or which makes all the desires of a person come true, as well as it also liberates mokshadam. Now when we talk about swasthyam, What is swasthya? Where a person can be completely on one's own without any external support. Swa, stha. And that which carries one towards swa, that is self, and stha means being stable or standing upon one's own self, is swasthya. There are so many things which can take one up to swasthya. You know, one very famous Ayurvedic verse when you talk about the complementary and the indigenous medicine, Acharya Sushrut has stated, Samadosha samagnishcha samadhatu malakriya prasannatmendriya mana swastetya vidhiyate. So, when the physical self is wonderfully positioned, a person is healthy physically. When the psychological self is also in a pleasant condition, it is ready to receive so many things. Then the emotional self also is good. The functioning of the body is going on well. The social aspect of a person's living is up to the optimum, as well as the spiritual aspects, very important. And technically, when we are created from subtle to manifested towards the cross. That means the subtle aspect of health is very important. Unfortunately, what happens today that we are so materialistically engulfed that we focus only upon the materialistic aspects, like the pain in some part of the body or inconvenience in some part of the body, or not being psychologically or physically being able to adjust with something or some place or some condition. And you know, as our ancient classics have stated, Brahm Satya Jagan Mithya. That means the truth is the only absolute truth. Without that, everything else is futile, worthless. And that aspect leads us towards the spiritual part of the health and our existence. So when we talk about pranava, when we talk about Om, which goes into the aspect of the Antaranga Yoga parts, no doubt it starts right from the Yamaniyama concept that you should be continuously in communion with the Ishvara or the God, like Ishvara Pranidhan has been stated. But then in the later part, the Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, and then when we talk about the later, the last three, the Sanyama part, then wherever Sanyama is done, accordingly the benefits would be received. That is what Acharya Patanjali ji has stated. So when it comes to pranava or Om, that is where the focusing and the contemplation part and then making one part or unison part goes. So when that can happen, Drashtu Swarupe Avasthanam, that is what's been stated in the very first chapter, that when you tend to become one, and when can you become one? When can you be totally focused? When you have no inconveniences, when you don't have any problems, when you don't have any pains. So, yoga is that science which leads towards that aspects, and that is how it can lead towards swasthya. Well, I can talk for many more hours regarding yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, each and every part of it, and giving you the references of the researches done world over or which are happening now, or citing some of the papers or some of the researches done with the gazettes trying to prove. But well, you all are well versed, you all are manishis, and you know that that is being done. So this just hint would lead towards that magnified aspect. And now the second thing, the second verse which I chanted. Chaitanyam sarva bhutanam vivrutam jagadatmana nada brahma tadanandam advitiyam upasmahe. When we are talking of music therapy, well, in English concept, we use the word music. But when it comes to in the Indian or Bharatiya concepts, it's Sangeeta. So when we talk about music, we talk only about the sung or the played music, like the vocal or the instrumental. But when we talk about Sangeet, Geetam Vadyam Tratha Nrutyam Trayam Sangeetam Uchyate. That means we have to talk about the music, the dance, as well as the playing instruments. And I hope the ISCM would definitely look into this broad definition of Sangeeta, not limiting themselves only up to music anymore. So, when we talk about this Sangeeta, the verse which has been stated in Sangeeta Ratnakar, which I chanted some time back, it states, Chaitanyam Sarva Bhutanam, consciousness or the bioplasma is that which is within us, which makes us living being and it makes us connected with all. So, Chaitanyam Sarva Bhutanam, Vivrutam Jagadatmana, and it is spread to each and every single being and single portion of the world surrounding us. Vivrutam Jagadatmana. Nada Brahma Tad Anandam. Nada Brahma, the element of sound, because we know there are two types, the Ahat and the Anahat. And that induces Ananda in every such soul, every such bioplasma, every such consciousness by its vibrations. And we shouldn't forget that when the classics of yoga talk about the Brahmari, the word used over there is Jayati Chitte Kadachit Ananda Leela. This Ananda connects over here. Of course, Dr. Anand is also there to connect us, everyone, with all those sciences, but still, Satchit Ananda. So we are going to the Anandamaya Kosha of our existence, which music can take us so easily. Of course, Hatpadepika talks about Nadanu Sandana, and there are stages, and accordingly, when we talk about the aspect of music therapy, let us also think at this point that somehow music not remaining only the tool of entertainment or a tool to modulate the physical or psychological or emotional conditions, it would become a sadhana as a part of the whole process. And ultimately, the ISCM would come up with a wonderful amalgamation of all those sciences. And of course, yes, the word salutogenesis, that which makes you focus within, think about your own self, take your own responsibility. That is very important. You know, for when you talk about the science of yoga, you have to be responsible for yourself, only then you can proceed on to that path. And when you talk about music, there also, you have to take your own responsibility, you have to be aware, you have to work on your own, and that is only when you will be able to proceed further. So, being healthy is one's own responsibility. We know that cure can be manipulated, it can come from outside, but healing will always come from within. And both these sciences, the science of yoga, and the science of music, the science of Ayurveda, and all other indigenous such sciences or the traditional sciences, they all focus upon development and upliftment of a person and a person's self to heal from within. Let us all pray today that may the whole world heal from all the scars it has had and it is still having, and may no grief or sorrow prevail anywhere. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kash.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arpan Bhatt, for that beautiful presentation. And it was very interesting when Professor Madan Mohanji asked me, who is that? I think I know him. I said, it's my dear Arpan, but it's been so long that he couldn't even recognize. So it was very nice, very beautiful presentation. Arpan Bhatt is definitely a competent one to talk about this because he is both a Ayurveda Charya as well as the Sangeeta Charya, and he is an amazing talent. Last night I saw him playing the tabla, the dholak, the drums at one of the university, the Gujarat Ayurveda University alumni meet. He was playing amazingly last night. That's why he took time to send me the recording. We now go on to the next part, which is actually the session for this afternoon. And I am very happy to welcome our dear Dr. Sumathy Sundar. So Dr. Sumathy Sundar is the one who has been responsible for music therapy at SBV over the past decade. And in 2010, when the Yoga Therapy Center was
Namaste.
developed.
Greetings from Chennai School of...
Vanakkam, madam. It's very interesting. He made it a interpersonal relationship even with the recorded video. Only Daya can do that. So Sumathy ma'am joined here a few years after I had joined, and so we have seen the growth of the yoga therapy, the music therapy side by side, divided by two walls and a corridor. So it's been a tough job, and then finally in 22nd August 22, 8, 22, it's easy to remember, 22 on either side and 8 in between. The institute was officially inaugurated, and on that day we could honor Sumathy ma'am and Madan Mohan sir for their unparalleled services for the cause of music therapy, yoga therapy. So she continues to be on our advisory board and support us through the Chennai School of Music Therapy. So I'm happy to present Dr. Sumathy Sundar, who is going to be sharing the journey of music therapy, especially here in a hospital setting.
Music therapy to all the delegates who are present here to attend this prestigious conference on the theme, Role of Music Therapy in Promoting Salutogenesis. And I welcome you all to this lecture on the topic, Medical Music Therapy Practices with Salutogenic Focus. Before beginning the presentation, I would like to thank profusely the organizers of the Second International Health Research Convention 2023 from the Institute of Salutogenesis and Complementary Medicine of Shri Balaji Vidyapeeth for inviting me to give a talk on this topic. Now let's move on to the presentation of the lecture. During this lecture, the delegates will be introduced to a brief history of music therapy in India, music therapy practice with a salutogenic focus in hospitals, and use of music as a self-care, preventive healthcare strategy in hospitals. Until the last decade, the understanding of music therapy practices in India was based on justifying traditional music healing practices which were passed on from generations to generations based on the belief system. But these last 10 plus years, music therapy as an evidence-based practice has been established with the advent of professional training programs which are offered in universities and private schools, and building adequate research evidence simultaneously to support practice. The belief-based practices are now replaced by scientifically validated practices. An integrated model of traditional practices have been applied rather than the traditional standalone model of music therapy in training, practice, and research. In the year 2012, for the first time in India, Chennai School of Music Therapy Private Limited, based in Chennai, in a pioneering effort, established a hybrid model of an online teaching program in music therapy. This program is a one-year postgraduate diploma in music therapy, which offers 750 hours of in-person clinical internship training in hospitals and special education settings. This was a period when the online mode of music therapy teaching and learning was unknown and unfamiliar. This hybrid model of a one-year online teaching program facilitated training more qualified music therapists and supported the development, growth, and expansion of music therapy as a profession across the country in the last decade. The training program uses various methods of synchronous teaching strategies and different styles of teaching, drawing teachers from interdisciplinary fields, having formative and summative assessments, and using the modern evaluation methods of learning outcomes that combine both Indian traditions and science. In 2014, a landmark development was initiated by the erstwhile Center for Music Therapy Education and Research Unit of the prestigious Pondicherry-based Shri Balaji Vidyapeeth, the Health Sciences University. The center set up the first ever university-based one-year postgraduate diploma program and introduced music therapy outpatient and inpatient services as a part of routine medical care in the hospital attached to this university. This eventually led to introducing plethora of courses in music therapy, from the master's degree in medical music therapy to a PhD program in music therapy. And simultaneously, the center carried out high-quality clinical research to back evidence-based practice in music therapy. Prior to the year 2014 and since the year 2009, this center has been functioning as a music and medicine unit of the university and has been recently upgraded as the School of Music Therapy and is currently functioning as a unit of the Institute of Salutogenesis and Complementary Medicine of Shri Balaji Vidyapeeth, which was established in the year 2022. Shri Balaji Vidyapeeth has been forerunners in developing and establishing music therapy services as a part of regular medical care under the ambit of integrative care to patients, indicating that a holistic approach of treating a person is important and that hospitals have to incorporate health promoting mechanisms taking into account the wider determinants of health to be biological, psychological, social, cultural, and ecological factors. Chennai School of Music Therapy has also been training music therapists in medical music therapy with a salutogenic focus and facilitating hospital-based internship programs till date. And I had the privilege of developing and setting up these music therapy programs under my leadership in both Shri Balaji Vidyapeeth and Chennai School of Music Therapy. Curing is not the end of the story. Healing also is important to complete the recovery process of the patients, said Professor K.R. Sethuraman, the then Vice Chancellor of Shri Balaji Vidyapeeth University, Pondicherry, and is a practitioner of general medicine. He was the one who was instrumental in introducing patient care services with salutogenic focus in the modern medical care. What is salutogenesis? If you have to understand this, then we have to know what is pathogenesis. Pathogenesis is focusing on factors which influence the cause of the disease, how to treat and cure the disease. When patients visit the hospital, the treatment focus by the healthcare professionals is primarily pathogenesis. And now we will see what is salutogenesis. Salutogenesis, according to Aaron Antonovsky, a medical sociologist who coined this term, is focusing on holistic health measures and factors influencing the health and wellness of the patients rather than merely treating the disease. Salutogenesis is to support principles of pathogenesis and also to focus on people's resources and their capacity to create health and prevent illness altogether. Salutogenesis applies to healing methods as a holistic intervention for health and wellness instead of just the disease treatment. As a music therapist, we understand music and music therapy practices where roots lie in philosophical background and cultural origin also aim to restore health. From time immemorial, Indian music Shastra, Ayurveda Shastra and Yoga Shastra have guided us on the importance of taking a proactive approach to self-care using these mind-body practices to maintain physical health, balance, flexibility, social support and spirituality. Quoting Charaka Sutra Sthana, Sharira Indriya Sattvam Atma Sanyogadhari Jeevitam Nityagascha Anubandhagascha Pariyayayi Ayu Uchyate. In Ayurveda, Ayur or life is a combination of body, senses, mind and consciousness. Its synonyms are Nityaga, that which is going on constantly, and Anubandha, which is the uninterrupted succession. Similarly, quoting a sloka from the music treatise Sangeeta Ratnakara, Atma Vivaksha Mano Ayam Manaha Prirayate Manaha Dehastam Vanim Ahantisa Prerayati Marutam Brahma Granthi Sthitaha So Ata Kramat Urdhava Patecharan Nabi Krit Khanda Murda As Yeshu Avir Bhavayati Dhvani. What is the meaning of this sloka? Whenever there is a desire to speak or sing by the Atma, which is the consciousness, it stimulates the mind, which in turn excites the digestive fire in the body, situated near the umbilicus, which again stimulates the Vayu, which travels upwards from the Nabi, which is the umbilicus, Hriday, which is the heart, Ganta, which is the throat, and Murda, which is a head, Asya, which is a mouth, to manifest or produce a sound. These two slokas from the Ayurveda and the music Shastra indicate that Indian traditions understood the relationship between the body and the mind and integrated these traditional practices in the art of healthy living, and music existed as a mind-body practice through singing, chanting and meditative practice for taking care of health in everyday life. Music as a mind-body practice increases resilience and sense of coherence to overcome illness, which becomes the foundation for better health in future. In this connection, you may recall definitions of music therapy interventions to restore, improve and sustain health by improving the physical, social, communicative, emotional, cognitive and spiritual health and well-being. Integrating music as a self-care strategy into clinical applications and quality assurance processes of health promoting organizations in the medical field. A general salutogenic orientation in hospitals for music therapy would be to set up or to provide an optimum healing environment with music and introduce music therapy interventions to support pathogenesis with a holistic approach to treatment, and also use music as a resource strengthening approach to support recovery maintain, restore, or improve health of patients and offer integrative care to support patients. This strategy would empower them through their patient journey and not just the short hospital stay. Music therapy interventions in hospitals facilitate and expedite recovery as a restorative healthcare strategy and maximize functioning as a palliative care strategy when cure is not possible. Some of the broad areas of music therapy clinical work as a restorative healthcare practice may be procedural support, pain management, mental health, neurological rehabilitation, and other pediatric applications. Providing music as a health and self-care resource also helps to increase resilience and heal as a preventive healthcare strategy. Music as a health and self-care resource helps one to take time to care and to nourish themselves, to counter negative outcomes like burnout, to increase resilience and heal as a preventive healthcare measure. On one hand, patient visits hospital on emergency basis, but on the other hand, they will also visit for preventive health checkup programs. Pregnant women visit for prenatal checkups. These populations are not patients, but they, however, visit the hospital. With these people, the focus is not supporting pathogenesis in the form of music therapy interventions, but presenting music in the form of awareness and sensitization program about the relationship between music and health and music therapy applications. Advice on the use of music in everyday life to reduce stress and sustain or improve health. These are the methods to adopt a salutogenic approach using music to increase the ability to refill and refuel oneself in healthy ways. Use of music to improve the sucking ability in newborns as a part of breastfeeding sensitization programs is another way to use music with a salutogenic focus. Music therapists introduce music as a health resource and empower the hospital staff, students, and reduce their work or study related stress and develop positive feelings, emotions, moods, and thoughts. And positive health at work is another way to focus on salutogenesis. Further, community health needs assessment is a priority for hospitals and help neighboring communities promote their health and cope with their environment without stress. Engaging in health promoting collaborations between hospitals and other external organizations with a community focus to improve the health and well-being of elderly, transgender, and the disabled communities is also a step towards targeting health and wellness. To conclude, salutogenic focus in hospitals require a broader application of music and music therapy interventions to restore and to improve the health of patients. Also, it is use of music as a resource for public health oriented preventive healthcare programs for the public visiting the hospital staff and students, doctors working in the hospitals and in the environment communities to develop positive health. What is important is understanding and distinguishing between music therapy interventions and using music as a self and healthcare activity. After training as music therapists, the work opportunities are diverse, the applications are diverse across the globe in different regions. The best opportunity is the one in which the therapist is able to fit in exactly and brings about a positive change with a family or community or patients with whom one works, whatever the context be, a hospital or a community or a rehabilitative center or a public health program. Thank you for the patient hearing.
I'd like to say that I'm very happy that we were one of the first interns to join here in 2014 with her, and I've come through the journey of these last 9 years, almost 10 years this year. And she has paved the way for us to connect globally and given me all the confidence and gone through all the courses that have come here. And I'm right now going to complete my PhD as well in music therapy. And saying that, I know how to connect, how to teach, how to learn, and how to share, as well as connect and bring people back here for us to learn more. And for that, I'm very grateful to her and I'm very thankful. And every time I listen to any lecture of hers, I definitely learn more. So those slokas that she just gave and those diction that she uses are really good. And I really learned a couple of slokas and the meaning of it and how we can understand how Indian traditional systems can connect and what we have now in the current state. Anyway, so saying that, next is Cheryl Dileo. She's from the Temple University, USA, one of the contacts that we have because of her. Thank you.
Yes.
Hello. I'm very grateful and honored to be presenting to the conference today. And I would like to talk about a research program that I've developed in conjunction with the Philadelphia Orchestra and homeless persons. So I will begin. There is a huge problem of homelessness in the United States. I don't know what the situation is in other countries, but I'm presenting from an American perspective and how we're using music therapy to try to deal with the psychological and physical problems that people experience when they're homeless. Just briefly, I'm defining homelessness as the lack of a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. So individuals who do not have a regular place to go to sleep at night can be considered homeless. That we have more than 500,000 people every night who are homeless. And including people who are children and who are veterans and who are already disabled and unable to work. In Philadelphia, where this study is taking place, there are more than 6,000 people every night living on the streets, and 15,000, including families, access shelter. And at any given time, 3,000 people are homeless, which is very, very many. And considering the extreme temperatures that we have in Philadelphia, it's a particular problem, especially in winter in freezing temperatures. That there are a number of factors that contribute to homelessness. Most often poverty and lack of housing, which is very expensive in cities, loss of jobs, loss of health care, mental illness and severe mental illness, substance abuse, domestic abuse, and post-traumatic stress disorder. In addition, these factors that lead to homelessness, there are problems that occur, such psychological and health effects of being homeless. So it's a very vicious cycle. And these psychological problems that result include trauma, learned helplessness, poor physical health, chronic illness, depression, higher suicide rates, cognitive impairment, anxiety, and social isolation. And homelessness amplifies even all the existing problems that homeless individuals bring. I'll give you a quick overview of the project, which is a collaboration project, and a rather unique one. I don't know of other programs like this in the US or in other countries. So there are 3 collaborators: the Philadelphia Orchestra, which has a community outreach program; Broad Street Ministry, which is a program that services people who are homeless; and Temple University, the Arts and Quality of Life Research Center and the Music Therapy Program. I am the former director of the Arts and Quality of Life Research Program, and this all happened right before I retired. Very quick visual images of the Kimmel Center in Philadelphia, where the musicians perform, a beautiful new center. Most of you have heard of the Philadelphia Orchestra. It's one of the best in the world. And the musicians are very, very accomplished and brilliant musicians. They have a program, a service program in the orchestra that connects the musicians with neighborhoods in Philadelphia. So here, the program, it's called HERE, promotes wellness. And provides music education and eliminates barriers to accessing the orchestra. And we are part of this program, this wellness program. Here is a picture of the church, which is right across the street from the Kimmel Center, where the orchestra performs. It's a church that houses Broad Street Ministry. It was chosen because of its proximity to the orchestra, and it's a faith community that extends what they call radical hospitality and creates a spiritual home for all, especially those who feel like they don't belong anywhere else. And this radical hospitality is to people who are experiencing homelessness. And what they offer is radical hospitality. So individuals who seek services at Broad Street Ministry are called guests. And so individuals in our program are called guests. And I will use that word throughout this presentation. Broad Street Ministry offers a wide range of services, including meals, mail service, clothing, and social services. This is the inside of Broad Street, of the church, where we sometimes hold our sessions. And the third collaborator is the Arts and Quality of Life Research Center at Temple University, whose mission is to provide music therapy and arts programs to underserved in the community, while accessing the experience of those served and the effectiveness of the programs we offer. All of our programs are externally funded. We've had, over the several years, almost $750,000 in funds have been granted to the programs that I've developed. And this is the home of the Music Therapy and Arts and Quality of Life Research Center at Temple University. So I was approached by the HERE program of the Philadelphia Orchestra, which is funded through external donations. And they asked me to start a program in collaboration with them in Broad Street Music Therapy Program. And they contribute about $8,000 per year. And it supports the cost of the 2 music therapists. Temple provides the instruments, the musical instruments, the clinical supervision, and the overall coordination of the program. The program developed as a clinical and research project. Temple is responsible for the clinical program, the supervision, and the research of implementation and design and evaluation. And our intent is to offer opportunities for homeless individuals to experience the beauty of art and creativity and its social, emotional benefits, and to achieve wellness through music therapy. The program was designed to serve 10 to 12 guests every week, led by 2 music therapists, and participation in the sessions of 2 orchestra members. We offered 2-hour weekly sessions comprised of creative music experiences with the goal of enhancing quality of life. And the emphasis is on service to women who are homeless, because there are not so many programs that are relevant to women who are homeless. I'll tell you a little bit about the musicians. They are the professional performing members of the orchestra, both men and women, all instruments, primarily strings, percussion, and with some percussion and brass. They are recruited by the HERE program through emails to members of the orchestra, and members volunteer for this program. There's no prerequisites, and they are paid for their time working in our program. But immediately I saw that we would have to train these musicians to work with us as music therapists in the program, to set up boundaries for their participation, because we want to keep the integrity of our music therapy programs. We do not want to make these programs just recreational programs for our guests. We wanted this to be real music therapy. And so we had to establish a specific role for the musicians and boundaries of their participation. And we had to train them. So we trained approximately 25 musicians over a period of several years. And 15 are active in the program. Different individuals come every week. Their role is to offer musical support to the guests' music, not to initiate music themselves. They need to listen carefully to the music the guests create or perform, and elaborate on their music, emphasizing musical themes, provide rhythmic support, sometimes make musical suggestions. They also the musicians provide their personal presence via listening and maintaining engagement in the sessions. They always follow the lead of the music therapists and the guests. And because they are performers, we've asked them to provide a very brief, several-minute performance at the end of each session with music that is uplifting to the guest and to the environment. They are not allowed to lead sessions musically or to intervene verbally. And they may participate at the beginning of the session when we check in with guests, often asking them to express how they are on a particular instrument, and the musicians participate in this also. So I'll talk briefly about how we train them. More than 10 years ago, I received a very large grant, and Dr. Yoka Bhatt and I developed a training manual for musicians who work in healthcare settings. And so we use this as the basis and adapt it to communities. So we talk about what music therapy is, the necessary components, and the differences between music therapy and other practices in the community. We talk to them about the research. We tell them about their roles. We emphasize their responsibilities, their confidentiality, and their presence, and the professional responsibilities they have, and how their roles differ from the music therapists. We talk to them about what to expect from sessions and the vulnerabilities of guests. Many of our guests who come have big issues. Sometimes we have remnants of substance abuse in our sessions. Sometimes we have severe problems. So we had to let our guests know that these problems are possible. We also give them experiences improvisation. These are professional performers who are not typically used to to improvising. So we talk to them about how to begin improvising, and most of them are playing melody instruments. So how do you improvise on a violin? How do you improvise on a trombone? And we talk about the various interventions that we use in music therapy. Very quickly about the research design. We wanted to look at the effects of this 2-hour weekly music therapy program on anxiety, hope, mood, coping, expression, and quality of life of persons who are homeless. And we wanted to assess homeless persons' experiences of participating in music therapy sessions through qualitative interviews. Again, we did not know. This is a rather pioneering research project. We didn't know what were the outcomes that were most important, and so this is how we began our research. We used some standardized measures: the Beck Hopelessness Scale, the COPE scale, and the Generic Quality of Life Index. And then we also used a rating scale that each person, each guest, completed retrospectively at the end of each session. So we asked them to provide retrospective self-ratings of anxiety, mood, and coping. At the how it was at the beginning of the session, and then how it is at the end of the session. And they used a Likert scale, a 7-point scale, rated their mood from worst ever to best ever, their coping from extremely poorly to extremely well, and their anxiety from extremely high to extremely low. The study was mixed methods. We used a pre-test, post-test design. The recruitment and screening was done by the Broad Street staff, but the music therapist provided the consent form and explanation of the study. The standardized tests were completed before music therapy sessions began and after several sessions. We used a visual analog scale, the 7-point rating scale, after each session. So individuals were interviewed after having completed 4 sessions. Now, this was a very transient group. We didn't have persons who stayed in the group for a long time because they moved around into different parts of the city to find shelter. So we had to have hope for at least 4 sessions before we could test them. The study was approved by Temple's University's Ethics Committee. And the musicians were aware of the research, but did not participate as researchers. I can't give you, I don't have permission to show videos, but I will present an audio session. Our clinical goals were to provide a safe space for guests to verbally and musically interact with each other, to provide empowerment through music experiences, to help them be in control because they were so much out of control in their lives. We gave them choices and allowed them to participate in the way they wanted by only observing or participating in a range of ways. Our sessions had to be very flexible because we never knew who would come. We checked in with them to get a sense of how people were. And then we used improvisation, singing, songwriting, and song discussion. And at the end of the session, as I mentioned, there was a short performance by musicians. This is a song that was written by the participants. And the song title they gave it was "Life Can Be Challenging," and life can be many different things. Here is a little piece of it.
Oh, so the last line, you're going to pick whatever line you like the best that resonates with you and sing
it. And the guest wrote all the words.
Ready and right can be challenging. I will win.
Every word, every verse was different. We encountered a number of clinical issues. There's not a lot written in the literature about working with people who are homeless. And so we encountered many clinical issues that we had to respond to. We had evolving group guidelines because we had many psychiatric and drug issues that emerged. And so we had to be very clear about the structure of our group and the behavior within the group. As I said, we could not predict who would be there, and we never knew what happened after a session, after we worked with our clients. So there was no follow-through. We only worked in the here and now. We dealt with issues that came up in the moment, and we let the guest guide treatment. I mentioned that we also had issues and concerns with musicians, but also very positive things that were in every session. They really enjoyed creating performances at the end of sessions. And it was really a challenge because sometimes there were two melody instruments and they had to perform a pre-existing piece of music. So we might have a trombone and a violin trying to do a musical performance for our group. So they had to be very creative. They put a great deal of effort into selecting and arranging music for these little performances. They were very impacted by the vulnerability of the guests. They wanted to do more for the guests. They even arranged a holiday performance for guests, including gifts. And they always wanted to do longer performances. They loved being in our group and giving to the community in this way. They also wanted feedback from us on their participation. This was unique for them, and they were insecure about how they were in the groups. Many of them wanted, at the beginning, they said to us, well, can you give us the music, sheet music of the music you're going to use in the groups? And we said, we don't use sheet music, we improvise. And so they had to adjust to that. And it was sometimes a challenge for them because improvisation was not a typical part of their work. We also had to encourage them sometimes to wait before the guests were finished, before they responded or added their own music. Some of them did not like the flexibility and how it's unstructured it seemed, even though it wasn't. So it was sometimes need for clarification and talking to musicians after the session. We had to enforce boundaries of therapy with them in terms of how they were with groups, whether they could offer suggestions in our verbal processing, etc. So there were those issues that came up. Our research results were good. We found significant improvements in our rating scales between before and after sessions in mood, anxiety, and their feeling about their ability to cope. And there were 51 participants who responded. And here is the visual representation of it. We did not find significant differences on the hopelessness scale, on the quality of life scale. But 50% of participants improved on these scales, even though it wasn't significant. We also found significant positive changes on their ability to plan. And we thought that this could indicate their increased confidence or hope for planning their own futures, or their grounding to better organize their thoughts and strategies for the future. We interviewed 7 of the guests, and we questioned their experiences of music, the music therapists, and the musicians, and their benefits, perceived benefits of participation, and the influence of sessions on their personal use of music. So their descriptions of their experience were really positive. They indicated that music therapy group helped them to let go of worries, concerns, and stresses. It helped them to connect with others in meaningful ways. It helped them implore the musicians in themselves and reconnect with music in their own lives and feel a sense of empowerment both within and outside of the group. And these were all wonderful things that we had hoped would happen. I'll just go through some of the quotes. Going through the difficulty of what I'm going through, it helps keep hope alive in terms of not constantly having worries and dwelling on problems unnecessarily. I love it. I love it more and more. This is my healing. This has been a learning experience, one that I can always remember. I use it to cope, but also express different feelings I have inside of me and get them outside. It's one of the, and regarding the orchestra musicians, it's one of the best orchestras in the world. And for them to be very hands-on with people who are having issues, it's a fabulous thing. So they really appreciated the musicians. Quotes from music therapists. The first time I came, I was frustrated because I lost my house and I lost my job. I said, my God, I was so frustrated. This is about the guest talking about the music therapist. But the more I came here, they showed me, you know, you can make it. You don't have to give up. This is a transition. Everybody goes through that. And every time I come, they love, because they show you that you're not alone. I like the instruments, but I like the music therapist more. And quotes about other guests, from guests. A lot of the ladies that come seem really weary. A few of them carry everything they have in the world. They never smile. They never express anything. They never talk. And then they come here and they sing. And they walk out of here with smiles on their faces. A quote from musicians. Though homeless, all the participants, including the guest Philadelphia Orchestra musicians, are experiencing a slice of making community, a sense of home, in a new and extremely meaningful way. The homeless participants are helping us in a very life-changing way, maybe more than we are helping them. I can show this video, which was done professionally, about our program, and it is available to the public.
For a lot of people,
who are experiencing homelessness. They can go throughout their days without anyone looking at them and acknowledging them. Any of us could be in the place where we need help. Any of us could be one of the people who walk through the doors, who need a meal, who need personal care items, who need someone to just talk to them. And so we offer that to other people because we recognize that we have and maybe will one day be in that same position.
I'm a music therapist here at Broad Street Ministries for our Music Monday program, which is offered to our guests who come to use Broad Street Ministries services and supported by the Philadelphia Orchestra. Most people don't want to talk when they're at a point of crisis or when they're struggling with something because the words don't always make sense. So I think music therapy is just a better way for us to be more connected to who we are and also explore who we want to be.
This program is we have on every Monday, like you don't need to have the musical background or like any music knowledge.
This program is great opportunity for growth for everyone involved to be working in such a unique situation and being around such a unique mix of individuals. This has been very exciting.
You're able to participate however you need. If you want to sit back and listen and fall asleep because maybe you didn't get a lot of sleep last night, that's your choice. You want to come and like bang on some drums because you're really frustrated because you didn't get sleep because in your shelter someone was dealing next to you and you're in recovery, so be it. Like, get your anger out, get your frustration out. Let's talk about it.
This is a place where you can come and release your pain or give happiness. If you're a happy person, give happiness to someone else, you know, and that happiness will bounce off of them.
The level of trust that's created when we're sharing music together, I think is pretty unique to what we do. And then we always have fabulous musicians from the orchestra playing and improvising along with us. And it just really adds an awesome musicality. And also the guests are just like, I'm sitting next to an orchestra musician from one of the most renowned orchestras in the world. And I'm playing music with them, you know, and they can't believe it sometimes, you know, that this is what they get to do.
And I remember one guest saying specifically that having the orchestra there meant so much to her. Having even just a few musicians representing the orchestra made her feel like this august institution, the Philadelphia Orchestra, sees her and welcomes her into our lives as well. And that was really special.
We're like a band. We're a band and we're grooving. But the thing is, you don't have to feel intimidated. It's so important.
The music ministry, what really gave me that hope and listen, you get back on your feet. You can do it. Every time I came on Music Monday, it was always give me that hope.
I think for the most part, we all just want to relate. So let's relate through the music.
So we continue to ask ourselves lots of questions. How are we making a difference in the massive issues faced by guests? What are the implications of music therapy? How are the differences we have found influencing the lives of individuals? Are there other outcomes we should be looking at? And where are we going with this? Luckily, it's still going. The program is still going. It just began again after not functioning for 2 years because of the pandemic. But it's open. It's open and going again, and we're really happy. We really want to disseminate this model of music therapy with having people who are non-music therapists in the group. And we hope that this will become a training model through conference presentations such as this, publications and media. We want to use our work for social advocacy for this group, for people who are homeless. We want people to see how big and serious a problem this is and that we need better solutions. We need housing. We need support for these individuals. Also, we need more research. Can music therapy be used as an early intervention, perhaps, for homelessness, as a way to mitigate the problems that occur because of homelessness? So I'd like to acknowledge all of these people who have been part of this program. And I thank you very much for this opportunity. I wish you the best for your conference and for the Institute, which is going to do wonderful things. Thank you.
We're very thankful to ma'am for sharing her wonderful works and experiences with us. Our next speaker is Professor Jessie Janssen, Department of Health Sciences, Institute Therapeutic and Midwifery Science, IMC University of Applied Sciences, Krems, Austria. Give us 2 minutes.
Life example. I'm a researcher and lecturer at the IMC University of Applied Sciences in Krems, Austria. Today, my esteemed colleague, Professor Dr. Gerd Tucek, was going to present, but due to personal circumstances, he wasn't able to. But we've worked on an empathy project together, and he asked me to do the presentation today. A little bit more background about myself. I've studied physiotherapy, but afterwards I've done a master's of biomedical health sciences, really went into the area of research, and then did my PhD in building clinical capacity, research capacity in New Zealand. So I've been broadening my scope outside of physiotherapy, more towards allied health professionals.
This is there.
Right, so the project that I want to talk to you about today is empathy. It's part of a bigger project that we've done, which was the Josef Resselt Center here in Austria. It was funded by the Christian Doppel Forschungsgesellschaft. And the scope of the research was to broaden the horizons of personalized music therapy. And the project consisted of 3 different parts. So there was some people who were looking at the right period, some people at the right moment, and some at empathy. I'll go into detail about the empathy. I just want to introduce the other 2 topics really briefly. The right period project was looking at when was the right time to offer therapy to a patient within a rehabilitation setting. So would it be the morning? Would it be the afternoon? Would it be when people are very tired? Would that be the right moment? Or how do we know this as clinicians or therapists? How can we help them? So that was looking at the right period to give people treatment. The second one is the Right Moment project. So in the Right Moment project, it was really looking in depth at those special moments when 2 people, a patient and a clinician, come together and they share a special moment. So they have this click and you think, yes, at this moment in time, we are really together. And what's happening there? So that was what that research project looked at, really in depth about what's going on. So that was a really interesting project as well. The last project was about empathy, where we looked at how can we measure empathy, how can we train people to be more empathic and also take care of themselves, be empathic towards themselves. So those were the 3 different projects within the horizons of personalized music therapy. As I said, I'll go a little bit more into detail about the empathy. And there are very many different definitions of what empathy is. The one that we've used is, and I'll just read the one the definition that's at the bottom here. It's the ability to share someone else's feelings or experiences by imagining what it would be like to be in that person's situation. So being able to share that that emotion that that person is feeling, that you feel it yourself. Why is this important? You probably all know this, but this is important because it really is vital for the patient-clinician relationship. And there has been done some research into it, and patients are more satisfied when they feel that the clinician is more empathic, but also fewer mistakes are being made. Patients adhere to medications better, and there were fewer malpractice cases. So it definitely has a win-win effect on being more empathic. But it's sometimes hard to stay empathic over a long period of time, and that's what we were looking at. Can we measure changes in empathy? Just before I go into what exactly we've done, I just want to touch on the notion of compassion, because it's related to empathy. And the way we've defined this in our study is that you have the empathy to notice that someone else is feeling something, that you feel it yourself. But the additional thing in compassion is that you're doing something to reduce or prevent this, so also act on it. That was the difference for us between compassion and empathy. Right, so overall, we had this goal to develop a curriculum where empathy and compassion are taught, so that when the clinician or when the students are finished, they can be self-empathic, so they can guard themselves, but they still can be empathic towards others and act on that empathy with compassion. So that was the original goal. We didn't quite get there. The good news is we got some additional funding, and now we are actually looking at developing that curriculum and training for students within the curriculum towards empathy and compassion. What we did find is that there were a few hills in the way, hills, mountains, depending on the challenge that you see. So today I just wanted to share a little bit about the path that we took in the 4 different domains. So the first hill that we had was, okay, what can we actually use to evoke an empathic response? Is there something that's being used a lot because we didn't know this? And I'll tell you what we found. The second hill was, can we measure an empathic response objectively? So if we have something that evokes an empathic response, can we also measure it objectively, not just with questionnaires? Then the third one, can we measure a change in empathy? So if we want to do a training, if we need to know if it helps or not, we need to look beforehand and afterwards and see if there is a difference. But then we need to be able to measure a change in empathy. So that was what that research question was about. And then the last one was, what could an empathy training look like? So what sort of training could we do with our students and perhaps clinicians? So I'll guide you through these 4 different topics that we've looked at. The first one is, what can we use to elicit an empathic response? So if you look in the literature, there has been quite a bit of research done on positive and negative emotions with films. So they've given a film and then they looked, is this a positive film or a negative film? So not quite the focus that we had, because we are looking at empathy. And there wasn't anything out there that really specifically also correlates this to empathy. In addition, the movies that they used were normally quite well-known movies that people might have seen a few times beforehand. So we actually wanted a new movie or film that we wanted to use. So we found one, which was the film Removed. It's a negative film or a negative response film, where it's about a little girl who's being abused at home and then is moved from foster care to the different places. And yeah, it's not going well. So it definitely has a negative emotion to it. Towards the end, it slightly changes and it becomes a bit more positive. So we've taken that out because we wanted to stay with that negative emotion. And we wanted to see, can the people who see this film, are they feeling empathic towards this person, and what are the changes with that? So we did a research question where we got some demographics like age and gender, and then they saw the film or the control film. So the control film was a film where someone talked about his holiday in the mountains, walking somewhere. So they either started with the empathy film or they either started with the control film. And then a week later, they did the same thing. Then the questionnaire was, we had the PANAS and the IRI, which the PANAS is looking at positive and negative emotions. And the IRI is really looking, that is the interpersonal reactivity index, is really looking at empathy. And we wanted to see what sort of emotions are there and what's the relation to empathy. So what we found was that with the PANAS, the positive, so the bigger emotions, that the control film was significantly more positive than the negative, than the empathy film, and the empathy film was significantly more negative, which is what we would have expected. However, what we also found was that the negative aspects was also correlated to the empathy score. So that gave us an idea that the film was also evoking an empathic response. So we've published this in 2020. So if you want to go into more detail about what we've done, please have a look at one of our articles that we've written about it. So we had a film that evoked an empathic response. Then the second question was, can we measure an empathic response objectively? So in this situation, we've used biomarkers from saliva samples, and in this case, we worked together with the Health University of Applied Sciences in Tyrol, also in Austria. They've analyzed the saliva samples for us to see, okay, is there a difference in saliva, in biomarkers when they look at control film or at the empathic film. We also looked at heart rate variability to see if there is a difference between the empathic film and the control film. We did exactly the same thing as what we've done with the previous project. But we had more people, so we had 61 people in this particular project. One group started with the control film, and a week later they saw the empathic film. Another group started with the empathy film, and then a week later they had the control film. We tried to standardize some aspects, so the same time when they did it, what they ate, what they drank beforehand, that was similar between the 2 days, because that has an effect on biomarkers. If you go into more depth about what exactly we've done, we gave them some questionnaires. Apologies, this is in German, but I'll guide you through it. So this is some questionnaires. Then they got the saliva sample. They saw one of the two films. They had saliva samples again, questionnaires, and then one more saliva sample. The heart rate variability was throughout that whole time it was measured, and we took 5-minute breaks out of this. So beforehand, during and afterwards, to see what's happening with the heart rate variability. So what we found was that same as in the previous study, so it's good that we have a similar response, that the control film was significantly more positive than the empathy film, and that the empathy film was significantly more negative than the control film. So that was exactly similar. So that was a good finding for us. Then we looked at the biomarkers, and we saw that in the empathy film, 4 biomarkers were actually changed significantly compared to the control film. So we had alpha amylase, estradiol, IgA, and interleukin beta. Those 4 significantly changed in the emotional film or in the empathy film compared to the control film. So we that was at least an objective finding that we had. What exactly it meant, we weren't quite sure yet. I'll go into this a little bit later. Also, we looked at the heart rate variability. In the heart rate variability, we looked at quite a few different variables. The only thing that was different was the standard deviation of the heart rate. So actually the variability of the heart rate. And we saw that in the empathy film, there was more variability than in the control film. Again, what that means is in the next phase. We've published this as well in scientific reports. So if you're interested more into the objective findings of this film, please have a look at this particular research. So at this moment, we knew that we had a film that we could use to evoke an empathic response, and we knew that also objectively we could see some significant differences. So what we then did was actually see if we could measure a change using the same film. So we had one group who looked at the removed film, and then a week later they looked at the removed film again, and we wanted to see if there are any differences if we measure twice. So we had 31 people in this particular study, so that was all students. Same as before, we had questionnaires in the beginning, then we had the saliva sample, then the film was showed, then we had questionnaires, and we had saliva samples again. If you remember, in the previous one, we had some saliva samples here as well. We left those out because that response was too quickly and we didn't see anything meaningful. So we found that actually to take saliva samples at a later stage, it would actually give us more information. And again, we had heart rate variability throughout the whole time, where we took those 3 times blocks that I talked about previously. So ideally, we wouldn't want to see any significant differences between the 2 films because it's exactly the same film. And unfortunately, the results were that yes, there are differences if you look at a film twice, which does make sense in a clinical situation, but we would have hoped that this short film was emotional enough that the responses would be similar, which unfortunately it wasn't. So in the questionnaires, we saw that there was significant different response in emotions, so in the positive and the negative emotions, which means that you can't use the questionnaires as a tool to measure the change. And the film probably not as a tool to measure the change. Also, in the heart rate variability, we saw significant differences in the outcomes between the same film when they saw it twice. In the biomarkers, there weren't any significant differences, so we thought perhaps there's something which we could look at, but the correlations between the biomarkers in the first film and in the second film were very low. So actually the results of this particular study meant that you can't use one film to evoke the same response twice, which was unfortunate. And we are in the process of trying to publish this, but because of publication bias, it's a bit more difficult to get this out there. But we are still trying. So that was the third one. So then we sort of knew, okay, we've got a film that evokes an empathic response, but that response isn't similar if you use it twice, and maybe not 3 times as well. We don't know this. We were still on course though, because we wanted to also look at the training effects of empathy course. So we worked together with a rehabilitation unit in Austria, where we worked together with the staff there. So these were not students anymore. And we looked to see what the effects were if there was a self-compassion course of 8 weeks. What were the effects on empathy and compassion? So we gave them the same sort of things that we did in the other studies, so the heart rate variability, the saliva samples and the questionnaires before the course started, and we did it 8 weeks after. So when the course was finished, we did the same thing again. We've only analyzed the questionnaires because at this point we knew that we couldn't use the heart rate variability and the saliva samples. But what we've also done is after 3 months, so after the course was finished and 3 months after the course was finished, we did a focus group and we've really looked at what do these people learn from this particular course and what do we need to know about this. So I won't present everything because I'm running out of time, but I just want to leave you with a quote from the focus group, one of the participants in the focus group, as what the effect was of this particular course. And this is the following one. So if there is a situation where I was perhaps angry because I didn't succeed in something, and then I immediately stopped because I realized, okay, why am I angry now? And immediately I went away from this anger and towards this compassion with myself and allowing myself to do that. And that has a very big influence because just this getting angry and then getting stuck suddenly fell away. Because the moment I realized that, at that moment, I shortened it to 1 minute, where else I would have spent much, much longer in this situation. So hopefully this gives you an idea that the actual self-compassion course that we run really helps the people in this course and in this research project. And as I said, we are now working in a next stage to see if we can implement some of this with our students within the curriculum. It's now still a research project, but we want to, if we are successful, we want to actually build this within the curriculum, so we, in the longer term, will have clinicians who are being trained on being self-compassionate and empathic towards others. Right, thank you. That's the end of the presentation. So thank you for your attention. I normally always ask, are there any questions? So if you have any questions, my email address is listed here. So send me an email and see if you want to have a chat over the research projects that we've done, or if you have any questions that weren't quite clear, then I'm happy to answer any emails or set up a meeting that we can have a chat. So the last thing I can tell you is I hope you have a wonderful rest of your conference, and hoping to hear from you if you have any questions or any remarks. Thank you very much, and hopefully see you in person next time. Okay, bye-bye.
There is some tea and snacks if anyone needs a break for 5 minutes, and then we will continue. There is one more presentation to be presented.